Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, the official podcast of Neo Tokyo, powered by Shrapnel.
Brace yourself for impact, crypto gamers, because I am reporting from the Shadow Zone. STX1 just wrapped up. It was an absolute banger. I know I was out there grinding for my Sigma, trying to get my missions complete. Only problem is, I suck. So I got most of my Sigma, full confession, off of dead bodies and extracted my ass out of there. But I'm going to get a second bite at the apple in STX2 dropping right around the corner. And it's going to include new map updates, suppressors, which I'm excited about because I want to live my inner James Bond fantasy, and I will be there grinding for some more Sigma. So if you haven't gotten a chance to get your extraction pack, now might be the time so you too can drop in. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Today we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Corey of Honeyland. How you doing, my man?
I am doing awesome, man. I am super pumped to be here.
Yeah, dude, you're the man. You guys are crushing it right now. Definitely one of the hottest games on Solana, which is one of the hottest ecosystems in existence right now. So really excited to have you on. As always, my teammate, my partner in crime, Mr. Nick, Crypto Atheist. How you doing, my man?
Doing wonderful. Beautiful day here down in South Carolina, and I'm ready to talk some crypto gaming.
Love it. All right. Well, let's establish a foundation. Corey, for those who, there's very few select people in the world who do not know about the project and yourself. Maybe you could build us a foundation of understanding. Who are you? What you got? And tell us all about Honeyland.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Corey Wright. I am the CEO of Hexagon Studios. We're the team behind Honeyland, which is a mobile play and own game available on Solana, downloadable in app stores worldwide. It's a proof of management game, or like a strategy and resource management game, we like to call it. And so where as you come in, you assume the role of beekeeper. We give you some bees early on, and then it's your goal to keep those bees busy out on missions. They're going out and mining the resources in the game and in the environment, which are going to be both tokens and items. As they're bringing those back, those items and tokens can be strategically used to grow and strengthen your colony of bees over time, so that you can go out on more missions and bring more things back and continue to kind of progress through the XP system and through the game and up the leaderboards. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a strategy and resource management game, and yeah, it's doing pretty well right now with a really excited community and a pretty robust and growing user base.
All right. Now, we're not going to let you get off that easy. We're going to need to go into very deep detail and go truly long form here. But let's start with the first thing that you were talking about. So the three pillars of that are: one, Solana. Want to talk about that. Two, mobile, and then three, play and own. So let's start with the first one of Solana. How did you make that decision? What's that been like? A lot of people are very excited about Solana. We're in kind of this crazy meme coin Solana season, mixed with a lot of games are going on Solana. We're just seeing the powerful effects of an L1 with as close to zero transaction fees as humanly possible. Talk us through Solana, the reason why, how that came about, the decision making, all that stuff. Give us the juicy details.
Yeah, so we first, as a team, got together on November 15th of 2021, discussed the idea of Honeyland. And so we're looking like, almost 2.5 years of building. And so this is one of those one-way doors to some extent, where you kind of make a decision on your blockchain and you can't really go back through it and redo it. Of course, you can move multi-chain and things like that. And so it was a decision that we were convicted on Solana. There was really three things that we were looking for, which was just the performance of the blockchain. So something that had the right throughput, speed, TPS, cost that would allow us to run a game, right? So Ethereum, obviously, because of the cost, you can't run a blockchain game on Ethereum. Of course, layer twos become a really good option there. The second thing was the community. When this was back in like NFT season and Solana was just hot, there was such a rad community. And it was really cool that we're like, hey, if we're going to launch a game, we want to launch it into a community that can really support us and help kind of be our early growing grounds for the game. And then the third thing was you need the supporting architecture and infrastructure in the ecosystem. So we need wallets and nodes and marketplaces, and there's so many other things that you need to build a game that you're not building from the tech layer. You're using other tech that they exist in the ecosystem. And so when we looked at those three things, we felt like Solana had really just the best combination of those three things. I should mention that, Honeyland is really intended to be a Web 2.5 game, and it always has been. Like our initial, what I would say, like vision was to bring millions of people or introduce crypto to millions of people by making it fun and easy to understand. That was our initial vision. We've since shifted a little bit to kind of building the future of Web3 gaming. We'll get into what that looks like and what we're doing, I think, to contribute to that. But because of that, the blockchain is important, but it wasn't the most important thing for us. It just needed to perform and have a lot of the infrastructure that we could go build on to allow us to build a game. And so we've done a lot of like this on-chain, off-chain architecture that's really put kind of the blockchain in the background, although we certainly need it to do all of those things for us as well. It's been a bit frustrating lately, just with getting, Solana's had a lot of just congestion. There's the promise is still there. We're closely tied to their team and their tech team to figure out kind of what the next steps are. And I know that we'll get through this, but yeah, it makes us more grateful than ever that we built this Web 2.5 system. So our game still operates every single day. We're just on the studio side because settlements take place in the background, and we're having a lot more challenges with a lot of that stuff, but the players don't experience it quite as much.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of like there's the mechanism within the game, and that's what the players are interacting with. But so much is happening behind the scenes that you as the founder and the builder and the creator have to deal with, that a lot of times they don't really see. And I guess maybe one of a good follow-up things or a little side quest to explore is like when you were looking at all the existing infrastructure, because you need to have the wallet, the marketplace, all these different things and pieces of infrastructure, and you need to have a community. And we know that Solana is kind of growing, but at the time it was a lot smaller than ETH, and so there's a lot more TVL on ETH versus Solana. How did you kind of figure out, okay, we do believe that this is scalable for the long term and that this can handle it, and that there are enough people that understand how to build here? Like, was it like we're doing this because we think that this is like, and I know you touched on it a bit, but I want to double click on it. Like, is this the superior technology? Maybe you can just kind of help us understand, like, what about it makes it the superior technology, and like, what's the scalability opportunity over time for it?
Yeah, I think Ethereum has always been like a security blockchain, right? That's where you know that you're going to have a ton of security. But when we looked at like a consumer experience, Phantom is just a better wallet than MetaMask. It always has been. Magic Eden is just a better marketplace experience than OpenSea. It always has been, right? And so like as we started to just line these things up and go, if we want gamers to come in and play the game, it's got to be fun. It's got to be a great experience. And so I think that's where we really leaned towards looking at like EVM like layer twos versus going with Solana as a layer one. And I just felt like it was just a more consumer friendly like series of tools, and so we wanted to go lean on that. And of course, I think Solana's done a good job of bringing in even more really cool consumer friendly tools and builders into the space as well.
100%. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to dive into is I play a good amount of Honeyland. And once you get someone able to download the app and they're booting up Honeyland for the first time, they're greeted by a wonderful tutorial that guides them through all the different aspects of what, if you were just dropped into the universe, could be quite overwhelming. So once you bring them in, once you have this tutorial, what sort of thinking on your guys' end went into that to make it such a capturing experience that A, educates the player, and B, entices them to keep playing? I'd love to get a little bit of your thinking around that.
Yeah, so this is literally, so we launched the game back on April 30th of 2024. So just, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary. And it's almost been our entire focus of, we've launched a lot of new features in the background. We've launched a marketplace and a raffle system and so many things that I've probably forgotten at this point. But from like an ongoing, like what I would call like not just a new feature set, but like what are we trying to optimize? The onboarding player experience is the one thing that for like 11 months we've devoted a ton of our resources towards. And if you were to go back and look at the onboarding experience when we first launched versus 4 months ago versus about 3 weeks ago, we kind of launched our most recent new onboarding. It's entirely different. And the challenge for us is we need to make this game what I would call like the time to fun has to be immediate, right? Like you immediately need to come in and start having fun. You can't just feel like you're learning for a week before you can actually start having fun. We need to protect, and we'll talk about kind of the play and own, but we need to make this so that you can have fun, and then it's a Web3 game that our goal and vision has always been free to play as long as you want. Of course, participating or investing time, money, and energy into the game will help you to progress faster, and money is one quick way to do that. But you don't have to ever spend money. And so, how do we make this immediately fun, immediately free to play, or free to play as long as you want, but also still fun, that you don't feel like everybody else around you is moving much faster and it's kind of this tortoise or the hare thing? And then how do you take this game that at the highest level is just like keep your bees busy? That's what I tell people, right? It's this social media replacement that when you're waiting for somebody at a restaurant, or you're in the car as a passenger and you just need to kill some time, like just open up your phone and send your bees out, right? See what bees are idle and ready to go out on missions and keep them busy. But when you drill down, like we have what I would call mid-core play. Like it's at its core, it's a mid-core game. There's a ton of layers of strategy of how you're organizing and upgrading and growing your colony, how you're organizing missions, how you're finding the lands, like all of these things. There's a ton of strategy. So how you're breeding and hatching, and just like, how do you make this game simple enough that you can just be like, oh no, just keep your bees busy and not feel overwhelmed? But also for somebody who's a little bit more of a gamer and wants to spend a little bit more time, how do you introduce all these strategic elements into it that really make the game special? There's PvP elements to it. And so like, it's been a massive challenge, and it still will be. We've finally gotten our retention numbers above what I would call industry standard, which that's not where we want to end. But this, what I call like the 40-20-10, which is like 40% day one retention, 20% day 7, and 10% day 30 is kind of like industry standard for what you're looking for. We're above all three of those metrics now, which is great. I really want to get to significantly higher than that. I think that we can be at like 50, 25, and 15, which obviously that day 30 is the most important number. Getting that 50% higher than industry standards would be really, really important. And so I think that we'll continue to do that. But Nick, it's a really good point. It's been something that it's the biggest optimization, this ongoing optimization that we've had to make throughout the journey of this game.
Yeah, and to drill down on that. Oops, sorry, Ben.
I was just going to say, just real quick, probably one of the most underrated things you just said is the new metric that you've created, which is time to fun, TTF. I think everybody should think about that, and just want to plant that seed. Like, everybody should think about time to fun and minimizing that delta. Anyways, please continue.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's such an important point. I mean, keeping that tight, because once someone puts down a game before they reach that TTF, they're never coming back. It's a one-way, one of those one-way Jeff Bezos doors out of your ecosystem forever. So I think you guys have done a great job. Since you've gone already through a few different iterations of this tutorial, which I think is a few more iterations than most games have, what are some of the things that you're really optimizing, from the original to that second one, which I think is the one I went through, to this most recent update a few weeks ago? What are some of the things that you're dialing down to cut down on that time to fun?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we did in the first, like from original launch to like the next 6 months, is we completely rebuilt the free-to-play economy. So what we realized is that free-to-play players, when they would come in initially, we'd give them 9 bees. We called them Gen Z bees. They would live forever. They just had weaker stats than like the actual NFT bees, right? But because of that, the only way to actually like breed or upgrade or cosmetically enhance or anything else was to have actual NFT bees. So you had to spend money. There was no path into like participating in all of the different parts of the economy. And so I said, great, how do we fix this? And so we completely redesigned what the free-to-play or the Gen Z part of the game looks like. And so now Gen Zs have a lifespan to where they live for like 90 days, or up to like, I think up to 120, between 30 and 120 days, depending on what you're doing. You can upgrade those bees. We've made it really easy to go find the items to upgrade. We've made it really cheap to go find those items to upgrade. So if you're actually managing your colony well and like keeping your bees busy, you'll be able to do all these things: hatching, breeding, upgrading, all the things that make the game really, really fun, organizing your colony in a much more efficient manner. And so they get to do a lot more. And so that was part number one. And then part number two was just making this, changing the journey to make it less, feel less mechanical and make it feel more progressive, right? That like as you're learning these new things, that it feels like you're unlocking new things, you're progressing through the XP. And some of this was just done through the user experience, not even like actually changing mechanics. Some of it was done through changing mechanics to make it a lot more like smaller wins, as opposed to like, okay, go learn this for the next hour or two, breaking that down into smaller things. And so it's been a very iterative cycle, but I would say the biggest thing was making the Gen Z something that forever you could play and continue to have fun and participate in all elements of the game. And then also making it just easier and more fun to understand and onboard, new players.
Corey, was the decision to make the Gen Z bees weaker, was that a cultural statement there? Is that talking about Gen?
Yeah, and then we got boomer bees and we got millennial bees. Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's hilarious. But no, I think that's definitely a really good idea of like having like your foundation model, if you will, of weaker Gen Z bees, and then letting people explore and participate and have fun, and then minimizing their time to fun, getting them in, establishing the habit within them of like, hey, I want to go, keep my bees working, keep them going, keep them going, keep them going, and that to me seems like a very powerful habit forming sort of setup there, right? Like
Yeah,
if we think about some of the best games, it's things you need to do daily and want to do daily because you want to progress. So that it gets you onto the treadmill faster.
yeah, there's these two like big challenges, which are like, how do you build a path to like to like where you can actually do something meaningful and significant, that like if you just feel like you're always playing but you're never doing anything, then it's not, well, I should say there's this path to like how do we unlock things so that like if you want to come in and play a Web3 game, that you feel like you can actually earn and own and do some of the promises of what Web3 gaming is, right? And so I think the biggest thing that we've had to combat with that is both mechanically, and then what we're trying to do now is technically figure out, is there a single real human being behind every account? And if there is, I can unlock a lot more than if there's multi-account incentives or bot incentives and things like that, which we know can just get exploited to hell. And this is a challenge and a problem that Web3 games are going to face forever, right? And so when I talk about like building the future of Web3 gaming, there's a couple things that we're doing, again, both mechanically, but also technically at this point, where we're really trying to solve that. And then the second thing is, and I think this is a problem that play and own games are going to have to really come face to face with very soon, and we've seen this a lot, is that play to own generally is play to own and then own to sell, right? Like that's ultimately why people are like where this Web3 comes from, why they want to earn and how much can I earn and what's my return on investment. And that's great. But I think that until we figure out that there's a play to own and then there's an own to other option, which I would call it own to play, and this is kind of what we're talking about internally, is how do we go build own to play games within our ecosystem so that there's two ways that you can own. You can either buy your way into ownership or you can play your way into ownership. But ultimately, ownership matters not just to sell it, but ownership matters to go experience or drive happiness in some other way. And so that's where we're laser focused right now, because I just think it's very difficult if a play and own game comes in and the only reason to own is to go continue to play to own more, right? And you just have this cycle. And then eventually when you're done, it's own to sell. And there's really this loop that's kind of like as soon as that bubble starts to burst, then everything comes crashing down. We saw that with Axie. They had other issues as well, and they did a lot of other things really, really well. So I don't want to blame them. They would admit, I've talked to them quite a bit. They would admit some of what they got wrong. They also got a lot right. But I think what we're going to start to see in Web3 gaming is own to play. It has to become the new meta. And how you own that can be very, very different, right? And so through play or through purchasing or through mints or through whatever. But I think there's new genres of gaming in the same way that free to play, in the same way that play to own, and I think there's going to be other new genres that have not been unlocked in Web3 gaming yet that are going to be a lot of fun.
So this is perfect because it goes into this third pillar that I really wanted to cover here, and I want to jump back to mobile at some point, but not
Sure.
yet. Thinking about play to own, like maybe we could just clarify, like what exactly does that mean? Because you have like the play to own from the perspective of, okay, maybe you start off with something and then you're playing and it be enabled to in order to be able to earn into like cosmetics to make it look cooler so you can flex online, or it's like to earn critical components that you need to own in order to unlock different functions within the game, or it could even be power ups to be able to have a competitive advantage in the PvP mode that you were talking about, which I also want to dive into later on. So, like, what exactly does the owning enable you to do that you could not previously do? And then what's that path from I'm starting as a Gen Z weak B and I'm trying to like level up into something that's more than that? Like, what does that actual path to ownership look like?
Yeah, so Ben, you hit the nail on the head. Everything that you mentioned there of why you want to own exists in Web2 gaming today. The only difference with Web3 is that it's tokenized, which means we have the ability to sell it, right? And so if the ownership doesn't unlock something different, whether it's interoperability, whether it's a new experience, whether it's player to player, um, um, I mean, obviously trading and transacting, which is essentially what NFTs were, right? You'd buy your way into ownership and then this trading and speculating. And so there's a financial, generally in play to own, the primary motivation to come in is financial, not gameplay, right? And I think we see a lot of games that today are Web3 games that have taken exactly what we do in Web2 and just tokenized it as well. A lot of the first person shooters and a lot of these MMOs are kind of just saying, hey, what if we just tokenized everything? And I don't think that's good enough. I think Web3, I mean, unless the game is better, but try and go beat those those Web2 games that have been doing it forever. They're fucking awesome at what they do. Like, it's just difficult to build a better first person shooter than what exists today, right? And so it either needs to be a more creative game loop, and Web3 happens to be a part of it. But if Web3, the tokenized ownership of skins or levels or power ups or whatever it is the only real other reason to play, then it's a financial incentive. And ultimately, that becomes really difficult to sustain because that financial incentive, when somebody comes in, I always talk about like these, when you tokenize an asset, you get to basically sell it one time, but you're selling a lifetime transferable membership to that original owner, right? And then that original owner, whether it's an NFT or a skin or whatever it is, if it's tradable or sellable, or they're able to create value out of it and then trade it with another player, player two or owner number two comes in and feels like they paid the full amount for that item and that should be serviced forever. Yet the publisher received maybe royalties, but probably nothing, right? And so it's very, very dangerous when you start to tokenize assets that have a lifetime transferable membership to them. And so I think that we really need to start thinking about these things different, like in much more, I think these last 4 years has unlocked what Web3 gaming can be and has like taught us a ton. But I think that we are a long ways away from where Web3 games will actually get to, where there's new things that are unlocked because of Web3 gaming. I'll give you one example. I think when we talk about like PvP, I think player to player or real stakes gaming, whatever you want to call it, I think is something that's unlocked by Web3 that cannot be unlocked in Web2. You don't have the payment rail system to have an actual financial risk and reward take place from player to player at scale, internet globally with Web2, right? Web3 unlocks that. Now let's start to figure out how we can really drive that to the next level, build new games around that, build new experiences around that, build that into existing games and experiences. BR1 is a really cool, when I first heard about this, they're another Solana first-person shooter, and they have this, they've coined the idea, pay to spawn, and kill to earn, which I think is great, right? So you pay, let's call it $1 to come in, and then everybody that you kill, you earn $1, right? And then when you cash out, I think you get 90% of it or something like that. And so like, it's real stakes first-person shooter gaming. That's awesome. That's only available with Web3 games. And so I think that's kind of unlocking a new chapter. And I think that if we just take an existing first-person shooter and say you own your gun skins, I don't think that's really moving the needle far enough.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to dive into is I was just watching one of my favorite Web2 streamers, Pirate Software, and he was talking about one critique he had for blockchain gaming, and it really ties into the ownership point, which is humans are fallible, gamers are fallible, we lose passwords, we do silly things and end up having our accounts taken over. And in the Web2 world, they can go, okay, I'm the administrator. I can sort of restore balance here. In the Web3 side, that's not as easy. where does that fit into the mainstream adoption where you are going to have these people losing these accounts? Is it a shift in ethos that gamers are going to have to catch up to? Is there some place that the actual game developers can step in and do an in-between model? How are you guys thinking about that, both for Honeyland and maybe more in general in the gaming Web3 space?
Yeah, I think it's it's partially a technical lock with decentralization, but it's also very much going to be at the publisher level to figure out where they want to draw those lines. For instance, Solana has new like token standards that you can actually create tokens that would be freezable, withdrawable, all these things, right? We, as players come into our game, they stake their assets in order to play them, which means we technically custody those at that point, right? And so we can start making decisions based on that. That says like, okay, we can freeze these assets, we can lock an account, we can, and so this now starts to become an ethos, right? Where we tend to draw the line is we will do things that protect the ecosystem, but we won't do things that protect an individual. So if an individual gets scammed, right? And then that scammer takes that assets into the game and starts playing with them, I'm not going to do anything. And the reason being, this could be the two of you that you guys had a real deal that took place that was supposed to take place. Nick, all of a sudden you get pissed off at Ben. You tell me that Ben stole your assets, right? And I start freezing Ben's assets, but that's not actually the case, right? And so like, I don't think that player to player stuff that takes place out of my game that we need to get involved in anyway. That's decentralization's always going to reign in that. But I do believe that we need to do certain things to protect the ecosystem. That, you know, as people start to exploit things through multi-accounts and things like that, which is clearly prohibited in our terms of use, that we're going to take certain actions that we need. And so, but I feel a little bit more, I feel slightly different than probably a lot of game publishers. Most game publishers would say decentralization rules and everything. I think publishers need to create a little bit of centralization, a little bit of order with things that make a lot of sense to protect the larger ecosystem is, I think, where I stand. But I learned,
Yeah.
we evolve, man, and everything's case by case. That's where I don't want things to be case by case, right? I want things to be ethos driven so that like, it's not like if it happens to my mom, I step in because I know my mom, but if it happens to a stranger, I don't step in. That's bullshit. Like it's got to be all for one and one for all. And so I think that we just need to make ethos driven decisions, be clear with our community, which, you know, I think you guys know, we communicate at probably the highest level of any Web3 game. I'll put that out there. I think there's a lot of Web3 games that do a lot of things better, but in terms of transparency, communication, fairness, I think that we're leading the charge in that. We're very proud about that. And so we'll always try and do that. But we're still very much learning. This is all still pretty nascent, you know?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's coming full circle to traditional gaming. You know, if you got your Yu-Gi-Oh cards or your favorite marble stolen, there's not much that the dev is going to be able to do to return that to you. But if someone tries to shake you down at a Yu-Gi-Oh held tournament, then someone can step in from the team and be like, hey, we can make this right. So in some ways, it's coming full circle.
Well, and this is where, you know, people always talked about like the beauty of Web3 is that you own your assets. And I'm like, no, you don't own you own your assets in Web2 games also. You custody your assets, right? So when you talk about a Pokemon card, what makes that more similar to where you can actually have peer-to-peer transactions is because you custody those assets, right? So traditionally in Web2 gaming, we own them. And by the way, just because you custody your asset doesn't mean they're always going to have value. Any game can turn their servers off tomorrow, and those assets that you custody now lose all the value as well. So a lot of those same things exist, but the tokenization of those assets creates custody, and the custody of assets creates a lot of new things that we can do with those assets in terms of player-to-player interactions, which I think is really, really cool.
I want to move the conversation a bit to the second pillar, which is mobile. I think those who have a strong grasp on mobile and truly put a dent in that universe within the context of Web3 gaming, miles ahead of the competition. Because to go from desktop or non-mobile to mobile is a very difficult process, and people mess that up all the time. And it can sometimes sink the ship. But starting mobile natively, you have so many opportunities to build a competitive advantage. If we look at the world right now, we know that of the internet connected world, like 60% of the people are already gamers. A majority of those people are going to be mobile gamers. And as internet continues to spread, and there's a billion some odd people that still don't have internet in the world, quick perspective shifter for all of us in Web3 who are just, you know, zoned in on the screens all day. But when those people come online, they're not going to go towards like a big Xbox or a powerful gaming PC first. They're going to go for the phone and they're going to have mobile connectivity first. So the fact that you guys are positioned there to me is a huge competitive advantage. It was a brilliant idea. Can you talk through your thoughts on mobile, how you came to the decision, and what other second order effects were the result of that decision that people just aren't thinking about or aren't aware of?
Yeah, we were always intended to be mobile. And when I talked about November 15th, 2021, there was a lot of uncertainty. We were approved in the App Store through Google Play and Apple iOS weeks before both Axie and STEPN, which were kind of big releases in both the Solana and the larger Web3 gaming ecosystem. But remember, Axie was literally in existence for multiple years before we even started building. And so there was a lot of unknowns. You didn't know what it was going to be like to have a crypto or a Web3 game inside of the app stores. And you need, particularly for iPhone distribution, you need to be in the Apple iOS store. You have no other choice. You can't sideload like you can with Google, with Androids. And so for us, I think it was a bit of a leap of faith. We always felt like we would be able to kind of solve it and work with whatever limitations we had. We've gotten to a place, and to truly be a Web 2.5 game, there was a lot of things that we needed to do. And our thesis for even moving into Web3 gaming was that our background as founders, mine comes like really in like the digital marketing, SaaS, e-commerce space. So I know a lot of kind of that. Justin and Apoorv, two of my other co-founders, were very much in like mobile ad tech and mobile installs and user acquisition, high volume. They had done, millions of installs for Bree and Candy Crush and King.com and like the publishers, Machine Zone, the publishers behind the biggest mobile games were using them to drive installs for their games, right? And so like we basically said, listen, if we can get Web3 gaming to a position where it has the distribution of Web2, we can unlock the Web2 playbook and we can grow this thing and scale this thing beyond what any other Web3 game can do. Through that time, bringing me in, I think my role was really to make sure that the integrity of the game stayed really, really pure, and that we didn't just accept traditional norms. I'll give you an example. What we saw with like the play-to-own, one of the biggest challenges was that when these games like Axie or STEPN or some of these DeFi kingdoms, they all were a 2-token system. And the utility token was an inflationary supply. It didn't have a cap on it, right? And then they had a governance token that would have like a cap, and that's where the value accrued. And this caused this hyperinflation that created this huge decline in value over time. And I said, we have to build a single token economy that has a fixed and deflationary supply. Now, that puts a lot of artificial restraints on how we can build a game that we didn't need to do. But by doing that, I think it's the only way that we can have a sustainable economy. By the way, you look at all these other tokens, including Neo Tokyo, Bytes, that are now deflationary tokens, right? And everybody's made that move to say, oh yeah, deflationary is really the only way that you can accrue long-term value. And so there was a lot of things that we did early on that like we kept the integrity of the game. And then we kind of figured out, let's see what Apple's next rules are and next things are, and let's play within them. And our obsession with building a player experience that removed blockchain from the experience unless it needed to be done. So breeding and hatching and deposits, withdrawals, those types of things need blockchain. They're like initial blockchain interactions that need to take place. But everything else, even like upgrades, missions, PvP, all that stuff is actually this beautiful on-chain, off-chain architecture that we've built that I haven't really seen anybody do quite like us, that allows, so like Solana had a network outage, their first one in over a year, but they had it about 6 weeks ago. Our game continued to run. Now, you couldn't breed or hatch or withdraw or deposit or use the marketplace. Those are all blockchain things. But everything else, going out on missions, claiming your rewards, PvP, all that stuff worked perfectly throughout the entire outage because we do like mass settlements. We're almost like a layer 2 where we take all these transactions and then we settle in bulk to the actual chain. So it's all taking place in the background. And so this obsession with this on-chain, off-chain architecture, which also means we custody the tokens on behalf of the player. So a player comes in, earns 1 HXD today. We don't like put it into their crypto wallet. We actually put that into a player holdings wallet that we have that's available and verifiable on the blockchain at any given time. You can check the total balance of player account HXD through our Hive Mind at any given time to add up how much HXD is held in player accounts, and you can go check our on-chain wallets to make sure that that matches one-to-one. So if there was a bank run and every single HXD needed to be withdrawn from the game, that it could happen one-to-one at any given time, right? And so it's fully verifiable, but we've made it so that the player doesn't have to sign transactions or every time they're claiming rewards. And so because of that, it actually helped us get into the app stores. And so you can purchase HXD as an in-app purchase in Google and Apple right now, which is fucking crazy. But what's happening is you're just purchasing in-game tokens, and then we actually put tokens into a customer deposit wallet that we're custodying on your behalf. Now, when you withdraw it, we remove those from your in-game account, and then we actually move them on-chain. That's where the on-chain transaction takes place. We've built a similar infrastructure to our marketplace. So in our game, you can have an NFT, one of your bees that maybe you've gone and bred or hatched or whatever, and you're like, I'd like to sell this. All you need to do is push sell, make sure that it's unstaked, which is an on-chain transaction, but you'll sign that to say, I want to unstake it, and just confirm that you're unstaking it, which means you're removing it from gameplay, but you can now go list it in the marketplace. Tell us the price, hit list, and then we do all the on-chain stuff for you through APIs. It goes to Magic Eden's order book. It's listed on Magic Eden. And then in the game, a player can come in and go buy that. And the same thing, we just deduct the HXD from their account. We then actually on-chain, we then go purchase that NFT, we bring it into our wallet and we airdrop it into the player wallet, all taking place in the background, but there's no signatures taking place, literally not a signature to go buy an NFT in our marketplace in our currency, giving more utility to the HXD. So we've done a lot of really cool things there, but there was a lot of uncertainty, going back to the question, there was a lot of uncertainty with mobile early on, but we just knew that if we could crack this code, that again, going back to like building the future of Web3 gaming, I believe a lot of these things that we've done are going to be followed and mirrored by other projects to say, yeah, this is how we get global distribution in app stores. This is how we allow players to sign in with a Google or an Apple ID, create the non-custodial wallet in the background. This is how we allow players to purchase a cryptocurrency in the game that's treated as an in-game token, but custodied on their behalf until they want to withdraw it. This is how we can build a marketplace so they can interact with other players and actually own and move and sell and trade NFTs, but never have to actually sign for those transactions and do it in a native currency. And so we've really tried to unlock a lot of that stuff. I think we've done an incredible job, and all of that is live. This isn't like aspirational or coming down the road. Like today, my mom can go in and start playing this game and owning NFTs and cryptocurrency without ever signing a transaction or known that she's done anything Web3.
No, it's such a
Wow.
yeah. I mean, not to drop back in my day to any of the new Web3 gamers, but if you were playing a mobile web game traditionally, you would have to do something in the game, then go and boot up your laptop or hop over to your PC, go and hop into MetaMask or Phantom, do the transactions, and then hope that once that's settled, it actually like related into the game. So, I mean, you guys were at least the first game that I know who was able to facilitate this inside of the app, inside of mobile. And, you know, when we're talking about Africa, parts of South America that haven't yet been penetrated by sort of the gaming space, they are a mobile first. And so laying this groundwork, I think, is really going to be fundamental to achieving widespread adoption.
Yeah, it's you know, I've got two daughters. I've got a 7-year-old and she'll be 5 next, my youngest will be 5 next week. But I always like, if I ever need to get them, if they're sick and I need to give them medicine and I just ask them to take medicine, there's no way. It's just impossible, right? But if I put it in some pudding and then mix it up and I'm like, hey, do you want some pudding? They're like, sure, I want the pudding. They'll eat the whole thing. And I'll be like, by the way, your medicine was in that pudding. You just ate your medicine, right? And they're like, what? And this is kind of how we treat Web3 gaming, because I think a lot of Web2 gamers are, or mobile gamers, or, you know, people like my mom just don't, like, they're like, Web3 is scary, right? And like, or Web2 gamers are like, nah, we don't need that stuff. And so if we're like, no, just come in and play a game, and then, you know, a month in, you realize that you own cryptocurrency and NFTs and all that stuff, and you've been actually participating in a Web3 game all along, and you're like, oh, wow, I just ate the medicine, and this actually tastes really good, right? And so I think that was kind of the mindset that we took to all this stuff is, how do we make it not feel Web3, but give you all the advantages of what Web3 gaming is?
So I think we should, at this point, move into a discussion of AI and how that is impacting you guys, if at all. It's a hot topic. We cannot ignore it. What are your thoughts on it? How is that affecting what you guys are doing? Are you building with it? Is it integrated? Like, take us through your perspective on that. And even if you're like, no, we don't want anything to do with it, the perspective on why and your thought process there, to me, is very valuable.
Yeah, I think there's three things that we've thought of with AI. The first one is how can AI be used or weaponized against us, right? What are players going to do to weaponize AI in our ecosystem? And so we've tried to build, and we've done this from day one, trying to protect against bots and multi-accounts and extractor. There's just like certain things that you try and do. And so fortunately, I think we've got a decent head start on that, but we certainly need to continue to keep an eye on how AI can be a villain in Honeyland, right? The second thing is how can we use AI to enhance a player's experience? And so we are, I think this week, I'm not exactly sure, but we will be launching, we've been working on for about the last 5 months, building our own GPT bot that, and part of the problem is we change things so quickly, like what Gen Z look like and what the marketplace is new and the raffles are new. We've got a cosmetic shop. We've got like, so all these things like constantly, we ship so much new product and feature updates that GPT needs to stay up to date. But we will have in our Discord first, which I know is not very Web 2. So, and we really try and think of everything as Web 2 first, because Web 3 can access Web 2, but Web 2 can't access Web 3. And so we really try and think of it that way. But it'll be tested very heavily, like it's been tested internally. Now it will be tested to our community within our Discord, that we've built our own GPT chatbot that you can ask those questions of like, what endurance do I need to get to zone 6Bs, right? Like, what should be my strategy with a queen? What are the breeding cooldowns? What's the cost to do this? And so like you can ask even some strategy type questions and it will try and give you the answers to the best that it can. But it's really, really smart. Eventually, we'll port that into the game. If you guys have played, you know that like when you get into your Hive, you have like this Hive helper. That Hive helper will become a GPT chatbot that you'll be able to ask questions to directly there. So rather than using support or whatever documents exist, and just using like a static set of documents, you'll be able to talk to her or him like a person, ask the questions you want, and get the answers back. And then we're moving towards figuring out how we can leverage that as like some sort of sync or upgrade for like strategy as well, right? To say like, hey, go take a look at my colony of bees and go find bees on the marketplace that would be really useful for me. And we'll go look at the moods and the landforms and like the types of things that you already own, and we'll be able to figure out what bees exist on the marketplace. We heavily want to use it in the marketplace as well. I think a lot of players have assets and they're like, I would love to list this, but I don't know how much to list it for. Like what's a fair, there's so many different things that can affect that, and they don't want to feel at a disadvantage. And so we'll be able to look at, we have both cosmetic and utility rarities for every single asset or every single bee or queen in our game. And so we can look at the cosmetic or utility rarity score of that bee, 1 through 150,000, figure out where it lines up, and then go look at the bees that have sold in a recent time frame in a similar range and suggest a fair price that will allow you to then list below or above it. And then we can go find players who have like a mood match, which is kind of the biggest thing in our game, that something's listed below kind of what the value would be, and ping players to say, hey, there's a bee that we think you may like. And so using AI in a lot of really, really cool player experience ways like that. And then you got to think about it on the project side. How can it accelerate our game development, our art development, our business insights, all of that stuff? How can we use AI? And I don't think it's quite there yet for us in terms of what we've wanted to do. We've tried some kind of art stuff to simulate traits or new kind of UX or UI stuff for, and it just hasn't really been there. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, but we continue to keep an eye on that and figure out ways that we can leverage it to help the development side as well. So I think thinking of it as a villain or somebody who's an enemy of us, thinking of how we can enhance the player experience, and thinking how we can leverage it to make our team and our studio and our game more efficient as well.
I love how you're thinking about the defense first, secure the position, then move on to offense. It's such a tempting thing in Web3 to reach for the new shiny toy and really incorporate it into the game until fully understood. So really love the mindset there. There's another hive mind, which is super important to Web3 gaming, super important to Honeyland, and that's the community, which can also be a double-edged sword as well, because when you're building out in the open, I always compare it, maybe traditional gaming was like making a movie where you do all the development and then you release and the community reacts. Where Web3 game development's much more like stand-up, where every single day you're iterating and the community's giving you feedback, and standing up on stage and getting raw feedback can be harsh sometimes. So I'd love to get your thinking around how do you incorporate community feedback as you're making these updates? When do you incorporate and when do you go, hey, we've got a vision that we're heading to here, and I think you guys are really going to like it when we get there, but it's not quite there yet. So I'd love to get your thinking around that.
Yeah, so I want to be very clear that I see community feedback as a feature, not a bug. I know a lot of founders are like, listen, you do your thing. I also, at a high level, how I view it is that I think the community is great at identifying the right things that need to be solved or fixed. I don't think they're generally great at finding the right solutions or fixes for them because they tend to be selfish in their motivation. And so what I like to do is use them to identify the right problems to be solved, use them to identify a series of potential outcomes, and then take all of that and then work internally to figure out what the right outcome can be, pressure testing it from every angle, figuring out where it can go wrong, thinking about how does it benefit or hurt a new player versus a whale versus an extractor versus a multi-accounter, right? And so that's how we generally think about this. We have kind of 3 layers of community. Like we call our community the swarm. And there's kind of 3 layers. So we have these passes, which are this kind of funny story that was like initially when we did our very, very first mint, I was always like, man, and this was like the whitelist grind phase back in 2022. And so I was like, what if I don't like to grind for whitelist, but if I could just buy a whitelist, I would. And so we're like, well, let's just make passes and let people buy them and that'll give them their whitelist. And so we created these platinum and gold passes. We sold limited numbers of them. And then eventually people started, because they were NFTs, they were actually NFTs. Then once they used them to mint, they started trading them. And people are like, okay, I just bought a gold pass. What does it do? And I'm like, nothing. It was to mint, right? And then we ultimately then had to like, okay, well, now we've got to figure out something for this. And so they've become this like really fun thing that we can use them as like experimental grounds. We have been able to use them in like raffles and other things like that. So there's 500 total passes. I think the treasury still holds about 150 of them between gold and rose gold and then platinum and diamond. And ultimately, if you purchased one of those gold or platinums, they converted into a rose gold or a diamond versus one that's been given out through a raffle or something like that. And so what we do is we have these diamond and platinum holders that I have monthly calls with that are like 2-hour long calls where I get to source. These are our, there's probably 75 to 80 diamond and platinum passes total. So that get to come to me. And these are the people that are most invested in our community. They care less about like individually how a decision affects their bags and more about like the ecosystem because they're heavily levered on this, right? A lot of these people have sold everything they had in Web3 and brought it all into Honeyland because of their conviction in the project. And so when you do that, you don't just care about like, does your one token go up or down? You care about like, does the whole ecosystem win or lose? Because if the whole ecosystem loses, then everything goes to zero, right? And so they're a really, really good source of information for me and feedback. And then we have our holders, which are our Genesis collection. So Genesis is 5,500 collection that we minted back on June 2nd. And we always talked about that Genesis collection would have special access, both in Discord as well as everything else. So I tend to hang out in the holders channel in Discord, not the general or the newbies channel. We've got an awesome, what we call our Hive Vibe that is all our moderators and community managers there. And they do a great job with all that stuff, onboarding and answering questions. But I tend to hang out more in the Diamond, Platinum, and holder lounges. And then the other thing that I do is I do about once every 1 to 2 weeks, about 3 times a month, I do a community AMA. It's a live stream, 2-hour generally or more AMA where we've got a form. Anybody can go to honey.land/AMA at any given time, punch in your questions, and I go through every single question, usually about 50 different questions through an AMA that I just go through and I answer. And some of these are, feedback things. Most of them are questions more about the game that I try and give insights to. And then we have a form for anybody who has like feature ideas or things like that anybody can submit. It shows up on a Trello board for me, and I go prune that Trello board about once a month, usually with another 100 ideas or suggestions. I categorize them into UI, UX versus game design versus marketplace. And then, I'll go talk to my individual leaders on the development side for each of those with things that I think are really new, good ideas. So everybody has access to contribute feedback. You're going to actually hear me respond to it kind of the more integrated you are into the community, but anybody has a voice.
I love that. And I also think that the incentives are set up to where the feedback is going to be very constructive. So that everybody's on the same page, right? It's like, if you were to go to a consultant and hire them for however much you hire them, their incentive is to continue to get the next round of consulting fees instead of for these folks, they have the context, they've opted in, they've deployed a lot of capital into it, they're locked in, so they're going to do everything in their power, and they have the context and they're paying attention and they care to help push it forward. So the feedback will probably be a lot more raw and useful. That seems like a very powerful, positive feedback cycle right there.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say that, you look at a lot of communities and like Neo Tokyo has a a control on the community because you need to be a citizen in order to participate in that Discord, right? So there's like an opt-in type of thing. When we get into Honeyland, there's not that same opt-in, right? Like it is anybody can join, anybody can be a part of it. Of course, we have the holders channels and things like that, but we really try and move it to like a Web2 thing. But from day one, we really worked hard on building a community the right way, not just through airdrop incentives and grinds and whitelisters and things like that, but like building it on like belief in the project. And there was a number of things strategically that we did to reinforce that. And it built this core culture of our community that trolls just literally have no oxygen in there. And so if trolls try and come in, they're quickly like, oh, this isn't the right place for me. Like they've just got it. And I know that we'll continue to get more of that, and we'll have to, move from more offense to defense every single month as we get more and more players. As we go from 15,000 daily actives today to 30,000 daily actives to 75,000 daily actives. I think that we're gonna get a lot more of where we have to kind of be defensive, but I'm really, really proud of how the community's been built and how strong that core is. The culture is set that there's just not a lot of trolls that survive, and that people really are looking out for the best interest and tend to be really excited about the actual project, not just the when.
100%. And as full transparency, as a bag holder myself, a rather large bag holder, I'm very happy to hear about this. And yeah, I just couldn't be more excited about the future of feels like what we're building here. So thank you for everything that you do. We are approaching the top of the hour here. So really just want to give you, Corey, the opportunity to take the mic, freestyle for a bit. What do we not talk about that we should have? What's on the top of your mind? It could be life alpha, it could be related to the project, it could be literally whatever you want. All you.
Yeah, so when does this go live?
We're going to be publishing in less than a week.
Less than a week? Okay, so I can give you alpha. We're recording on a Friday. Monday, April 8th, I've got my big announcement that we've been kind of like teasing and getting people to this big event. So all of this will be live by the time this goes live, which is we will have now announced a massive, like a multi-million HXD airdrop campaign. You'll be able to go to Drip House right now. Drip House will have a sponsored campaign all next week. So the week that this goes live, you'll be able to claim an NFT from there, which will give you some rewards within the airdrop. But it is a very much incentivized as like a come play Honeyland and experience Honeyland. This is a user acquisition strategy for us that I think that if I can trick you into coming and playing my game for a period of time, that you're going to accidentally fall in love with it, even if you just come for the airdrop, right? And so this is my bet on ourselves that you can have a lot of fun. You can earn some HXD through an airdrop, but I think you're going to accidentally get addicted to the game too. So you're going to have to download the game. You're going to have to refer one person also. So this becomes a little bit of a viral thing, but we think that you'll have a lot of fun with that. On Monday, we will have just announced some really cool partnerships that we've got going live. One with StepN, where we're going to have some really cool traits. We're launching a cosmetic shop this month in April in our game, where you can purchase insane. We've got so many good cosmetics coming out, and all the different traits on your generative bees, the head and the eyes and the mouth and the clothes and the accessory. We're going to have a whole cosmetic shop now that you can go buy traits, and those traits actually add utility to your bees as well. So whenever you're buying something from the shop and moving them onto your bee, each NFT trait essentially becomes an upgrade slot to some extent as well, which is really cool. So there's both utility and you can start to customize your bees. We're going to launch with a really cool partnership with StepN, where we're actually going to turn the feet into a trait for the very first time. So you'll be able to go get StepN shoes, add like an extra, basically like upgrade slot, but it's the only shoes that will exist in the game are through this StepN stuff. We will have HXD staking goes live on April 15th. So if you're somebody who wants to, own and participate in Honeyland, but you're not really this type of mobile gamer, go get yourself some HXD and just go stake it. And that will give you exposure to the ecosystem. And as we grow and the health of HXD goes up, or we continue to invest everything that we can to add value to HXD. If that moves in the right direction, you can watch that become healthy while also getting some rewards at the same time. We will be unlocking HXD on-ramps. So right now you can purchase HXD as an in-app purchase, but those in-app purchases are somewhat limited. And also we we have to pay the 30% to Apple and Google. So what we do is we give you some in-game items, but you only get about 65% of the actual HXD that you should, so that we can pay the Apple fees. You get some items in return, but it's still not the best deal. And so we're building an on-ramp to where you can just go to our Hivemind, and you can log in with your account, and then you can, with credit card, say, I want to purchase $500 worth of HXD, and now we're going to give you 92% of that value instead of like 65% of that value, but all done through credit card, all done through a really seamless way. Same thing, we just credit your account, we go actually on the DEX, purchase those tokens, and then we custody them on your behalf until you're ready to withdraw those. Let me see. I mentioned that we are like we're Hexagon Studios. Honeyland is our main game, but we also have this vision of building out what we call the game mall. We launched a game months ago called Word Puzzle. It's a take on like kind of Wordle, but it's time-based and it's not a single game or single word every day. We have spent the last like 3 months completely taking the feedback from the community, reskinning that. It's got an entirely new UI, and we're launching it with, I believe, PvP and real stakes gaming is a major part of what Web3 unlocks. So we're unlocking real stakes PvP so that you and I can compete in Word Puzzle for real HXD. And then later this month, we'll have our second title, which will be Pollen Pop, which is like a match 3 game. Same thing. Awesome, really fun game. You can get rewards in there and things like that by just playing, but you can also have this real stakes gaming. That'll be really cool. Dude, there's so many more things. We're live on, right now, we just went live like 24 hours ago on 3 centralized exchanges, Gate, Mexi, and Bitmart. And then we are going live. We're live on Cube as well right now. We're going live on Coinstore and CoinsPH next week. So we'll be live on 6 centralized exchanges as well as traded on Radium. That's kind of step 1 of our centralized exchange strategy, get some trading volumes up and then, move to some of the bigger ones eventually. But really, really stoked on that. And it's been fun to see. So this is a big one. Nobody knows about this, but everybody will. So you guys will be the very first. We are going to be doing another Genesis mint. So Genesis is our like most coveted collection. There's Genesis Queens and Genesis Bees. There's only been 5,500 ever in circulation, but we always promised that collection is actually an 11,000 piece collection. We didn't know what or how we would ever put the other 5,500 into circulation, or if we would. We could burn them, we could do whatever, right? But we always had that option. We're going to have a very limited 1,100 piece mint that will be coming up either towards the end of May or probably more likely on June 2nd would be my guess. That's the 2-year anniversary of the original Genesis mint. So I think it lines up perfectly. More details will be there, but 1,000 Genesis Bees and 100 Genesis Queens. And anybody who's an existing Genesis holder will have a whitelist token that they can either sell to somebody or have. And then there's going to be some for a public mint as well. Do you want me to keep going? We're launching HXD subdomains. So this whole thing of like Honeyland identities is important to me. This will be the last thing, even though there's a couple more things. But so I talked about how like verifying a single unique human being behind an account is incredibly important, right? And so we're partnering right now with Civic, and they've been in existence for like 10 years, working on like identity verification. And so they're moving in. We're going to be their first gaming project they've ever worked with. But this idea that if we can just have you run a facial scan and then we just store that facial scan, not as like an image, we don't need your name, it's not KYC, but I know that face is now recognized to that account in my system, that you can't set up multiple accounts. Well, if I can do that, then I can start to really build a path from Web 2 to Web 3. I can make it so that when you retire fully used Gen Z Bs, that you can get real egg shards. I can make it so that there's certain rewards on maybe a daily spin wheel that become like things that allow you to actually mint an NFTB, right? So that you can, through gameplay, not through just money, but through gameplay, you can actually move into NFT ownership beyond just the fungible token, but into the non-fungible tokens. There's a lot more things that we can do with that as well. And so we're working on that. That's part 1 of the Honeyland identity. Part 2 is we've already got this live in the game, but linking like Twitter and Discord and some things like that to your Honeyland account. And then we'll be able to incentivize you through tweeting things and liking things and certain things like that. So you can get XP in the game by helping to take Honeyland bigger through Twitter. And then part 3 is that we have now vanity domains. We've done a really cool thing with Bonefita. They provide like Solana domains, .sol domains. We own hxd.sol. We actually did not own it a month ago. We went to Bonefita, told them we wanted to do this. We found the owner of it. They have an anti-squatting fund that they actually went and paid the full amount to go purchase hxd.sol from the owner, so that, and then gave us access to that. And so now you can go get, especially because we have a lot of Web 2 players coming in who, when they see a wallet address, a public key, is like, what the hell is this, right? So now you can go get ben.hxd.sol, right? And that now becomes your account that if you needed to, somebody needs to send something to you, you just say, what's your game username? So you'll be able to go get your game username .hxd.sol is like a vanity domain. That'll be a part of kind of your Honeyland identity. So all of your Twitter account, your vanity domain, and then verifying yourself is what we call a certified beekeeper. All that's going live. The domains will be live by the time this goes live. Twitter linking is live, and then the civic verification certified beekeeper will be live just before our airdrop, which should go live on May 10th. So is that a little bit of alpha?
I think it's a little bit more than a little bit of alpha. That was awesome. If anybody was not completely bullish already, I can now safely say odds are that they are. So that was awesome, Corey. Thank you so much for
and if
sharing.
If you want to get any more information on any of that stuff, that the honey.land is our website. hxdairdrop.honey.land is where you can get all the airdrop information. And then if you go to our YouTube channel, I do videos, I post video updates, all the live AMAs that I do, all that stuff is going to be on there. The full April 8th presentation will be, if you just go to the live videos, will be under the live video section, probably be an hour long that you'll be able to go watch in much more detail, everything plus a couple more things. And we're still working on literally what would be the biggest alpha of anything that I just dropped. We're still trying to get it locked in. That could be on that call as well. So there may literally be alpha for you guys that I can't even share, which means now I guess you guys got to go watch on April 8th also.
Perfect. Excellent. I'm literally picturing that meme of the little raccoon, like he, This is awesome. Wow. Well, I don't really think I need to add anything onto that. I think that was a perfect way to end the pod. Corey, you're the man. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today. Tremendously grateful for you, everything you're building, the time you've shared today, the alpha that you shared that we're now just flooded with, which is awesome. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me this platform. Really, really cool. I love what you guys are doing, and very, very honored to be a part of it.
And you're welcome back anytime. Look forward to having you back again on the pod. Thank you again, Corey. Everybody that's watching and listening, thank you very much. Really appreciate you. Hope you all go and deep dive into the beehive of a rabbit hole, but bee version. That is Honeyland. And appreciate you guys. Nick, any last final parting words for us, my friend?
No, just super grateful for the time, Corey. The hour always flies when we end, the enthusiasm, all of the alpha. So super stoked with what y'all are building. Can't believe all that's been built since we got to be together for the NT AMA. You guys are crushing it. So I will be tuning in on April 8th to hear all the additional alpha. And just can't wait. Super stoked. And thank you, Ben. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
Hey, one last thing. Ben, did you just tell people to go get involved in the bee hole? That was your rabbit hole beehive?
I may have accidentally said that, in which case,
okay. All right,
I'll own that. I'll own it. You can only be hosting something for so long before you just stick your foot in your mouth. So let's go. We're here. That happened. So everybody, on that note, we'll see you on the next episode of Interlinked. Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you next time.